Behind me is the next chapter in this little channel of ours. I bought a 2010 Volkswagen Tiguan with the infamous 2-liter turbo 4-cylinder engine. And well, it has a major issue, and I bet you can't guess what that issue is. Now, if you said a failed timing tensioner, you would likely be correct, because we do have pistons crashed into valves. But together, we're going to tear this engine apart, find out what happened, and see what we can do about it. So thanks for joining me, and let's get to it. Now before we start tearing this engine apart, let's get a little bit of backstory on the Tiguan. I picked this up for $1,000. It has 158,000 original miles, it's a Wolfsburg edition, and it has this cream leather interior that is beautiful. So let me show you around the car and see what we're working with here.
King in the castle, king in the castle.
Okay, we have a lot of disassembly to do, so we're going to start by disconnecting the battery. Let's get our ground off back here. Now before we take the battery out, we're actually going to take our air intake tube and box out. We're going to start by disconnecting the mass airflow sensor, and what you need to do is push down on it. We're going to start with a T30 Torx, and we're going to come here behind the engine cover where the intake tube is bolted down to this heat shield, and just take that T30 out. Now we're going to pinch our spring clamp back here for the intake tube. A pair of pliers. There, we've got it released. Now we can start taking our screws off the airbox lid. We can take and remove our airbox cover. Don't forget that there's a PVC tube down here that needs disconnected. You just squeeze the sides and pull it off. You'll find when you work on this stuff, Volkswagen engineering is a bit ignorant sometimes. We'll be back after I get that off. We're going to have to get a little creative getting this one bolt out here. They stripped the head of it off. She's walking right out because the whole insert came out. Got a little too much heat. That's all right. We can deal with it. Should be able to remove our airbox now. Airbox out. I'm going to take this line off the vacuum pump. I'm going to start moving the coil pack harness as well as the variable valve timing harness. It's all together. So we have some electrical connections to disconnect. Going to attempt to remove our variable valve timing harness. And to get these German connectors off, you literally need to push in and then you need to push down at the same time while you push forward. It releases the connector, just like that, and without breaking it. Okay, I couldn't show it on camera, but I got the two connectors down below off. And now we can take our harness and just lay it over and get it out of our way. You might notice I got a little bit of swag going on here. Has our logo on it. And that's because I now have a merch store. On that store, you're going to find things like t-shirts, sweatshirts, hoodies, phone cases, AirPod cases, decals, etc. I know already that the quality is pretty good, and I think the prices are on par as well. Next, we're going to undo this hose off of our PCV system. And then we're going to take our PCV system off. These are T30 Torx. Now we'll disconnect this line right here. We'll disconnect our harness right here. That goes down below through the intake. Okay, I did a little bit of work off camera. I actually drained the coolant out of the system. There's no petcock on the radiator on these. You have to actually pull it off the pump down below. So that's what I did, and it's mostly drained now. You're going to get some residual as you take other hoses off, but that gets most of it out. We're going to take these two lines off next, just because we want to get these rails off the heat shield here. I just use my plastic jawed pliers just to move them around, get them loosened up on that line so that they'll come off nicely. Next, I'm going to remove the bolt holding the lines to the heat shield here. This is a 4mm triple square. You can see the difference in a triple square bit versus a Torx. This is, I think, a 12 point. We're going to take that same 4mm triple square and get this bracket for those lines off the high pressure pump. I'm putting my bolt back just so I remember where it goes. Next, I'm going to take these two lines off of here as well. We'll get this ground wire off of here next, 10mm. This ground wire is brown with green stripe. I'm going to stick the nut back on, pinch this clip that's holding this other line on and take it off. And I believe there's another 4mm triple square back here it's the last bolt holding these lines to the head. I found something a little concerning, and that's that this heat shield's already loose, and we're missing 3 of the bolts that I believe hold this on with the head, but I'm not 100% sure. So I'm going to get under here. I think this last bolt is actually just on by hand, and see if I can just turn it out. I don't have the other 2 bolts. They're not in the car, so I'm not sure where they're at. Let me get this off. All right, so the good news is I got that bolt out. It's another triple square, and there are only 2 bolts that hold this in. The other piece of good news is all of the nuts that hold the exhaust and turbo onto the back of the head are there. So that tells me maybe this turbo was not removed and this head wasn't off already. I'm going to start taking the lines off of our high pressure fuel pump now. I think I'm going to actually crack the main line down below. I think it's a 17mm. I don't have any way to bleed the pressure off of this, so I just need to crack it slowly and let it bleed off fuel pressure. But in the meantime, I can take this harness off. I think I've had about my fill of these Volkswagen connectors for the day.
What the f is this piece of shit?
There's just no reason for them to be this hard. Sorry to knock you out of the way there. Let's get this main line cracked. I am leaking some fuel. That's good, the pressure's coming off. I'm not sure exactly how long this car's been in op, but the gas doesn't smell too bad that I'm smelling. That is quite a barb. Next, I'm going to get these lines off the front of the intake here. There's that. Just tuck that under there. Take this harness off right here. I'm also going to take this one off the throttle body. Now I'm going to take these 3 harnesses off. I think I'm actually going to leave these 2 connected, and I'm going to take the probably T30 out of here that's holding this to the manifold. Maybe we can just set it down. We'll see. Put my screw back in. At this point, I'm going to take the lower boot off of the throttle body here. So actually, before I can take the intake off, I need to remove our main fuel line the rest of the way. All right, I'm going to start with the upper intake bolts. They look like T30s. There's 5 of them. You do not need to do these up here, just the bottom one. Something that's a little bit concerning is the intake manifold bolt number 2 and number 4 were both loose already. Not sure why. Down, way down in that abyss, there's a bracket that comes up and bolts to the underside of the manifold. Stupidest design I've ever seen, but it has to come out. It is a T10 triple square that is bolted to the block. You have to at least take the bottom out, and it's a pain. Just so you're aware. With that ignorant lower bolt out, I think we're at the point where it's time to lightly pry this intake manifold out, because the fuel injectors are attached to it, so it's going to be tight coming out, because those injectors have O-rings that seal in the fuel rail. There we go. We have some electrons to get rid of here. There's that. This can just fish through the bottom. Here's one right here that needs to come off. All right, I was wrong. You should never attempt this job, ever. You should never, ever, ever take a Volkswagen engine apart. Never. I'm just kidding. It's something. I finally got the intake out. The injectors did not come out of the head with it. So I'm going to have to get those out after the fact. All right, I took a break, got some food in me, and we're going to continue on. I think what we're going to move on to next is the exhaust manifold and start getting that off the head. Then we'll move on to the timing and start doing that. We also need to take off the vacuum pump, high pressure pump. Right, wrong, or indifferent, we need to get the exhaust manifold off. These are 12 millimeter nuts. They weren't overly tight. The whole stud came out with it, which is fine. Okay, I wanted to show you a couple things about getting the exhaust manifold off. So this bracket here, I took the two triple squares, they were 10 millimeter triple squares, took those two bolts out, and then I bent this bracket back a little bit to allow the exhaust manifold to rock backward. I also took off the charge pipe from the front to the turbo, and the way you do that is that metal spring clip that you see, pull that up and you can release the charge pipe. As you can see, I still have this spring clip pulled back right here. Take your charge pipe off, you'll take these two Torx right here and right here off, and the charge pipe will come off. At this point, I then took a pry bar down in this hole and this hole of the exhaust manifold and just pried it back and up. Now it's off of the manifold. So that's going to be it for today. We're going to come back tomorrow and we're going to take that timing cover off, get the motor mount off, start seeing what failed in the timing system. I'll see you tomorrow.
The next day.
All right, it's the next day. It's about 5:30 in the morning. I got an early start this morning because I may have a line on a cylinder head for this car, but it's at a salvage yard that has a 2015 Tiguan in it, and they close at 2. So I need to get moving on this and get this head off to see if this engine is salvageable before I take a trip out there to see if that Tiguan still has a motor in it. Now you might ask yourself, why don't I just call them and ask them if the motor's still in it? Because in my experience, they will always tell you no. I don't understand why. The answer will always be no. It's a weird business stance in my mind, but I've always found that if you want to know if something's still there, you just go and look at it yourself. So let's dig in. All right, this morning we need to get this vacuum pump and high pressure fuel pump off of here. So we're going to start working on that. Using our T30, we need to take out the bolts for the high pressure fuel pump. Now when you take this high pressure fuel pump out, there will be a plunger inside that you're going to have to remove as well. Here's the pump. This pump's still good, so we're going to save it. And then we need to remove our cam roller from the inside, as you see. And this looks like it's in pretty good shape. There's no markings on it, rolls nice, no pitting, nothing like that. That's a good roller still. Now we need to take off the vacuum pump. A little overkill, but the only sockets that I have that are Torx are impact sockets, so we'll use them. And this one was already loose. I've found a lot of loose bolts on this already, kind of troublesome. We can take off our vacuum pump. Now there's supposed to be a screen in here, and I see that ours is missing. So that tells me it's in the oil track somewhere. I'll have to look a little deeper, see if I can see the screen inside of there or anything, but we may have to dig that out if it is in there. With that off, I think the only other thing we have is this coolant block here yet, which one of the bolts I see is covered by this hose right here. These are for the heater core. All right, we're gonna remove our heater core lines. A little bit of coolant left, not much. See if we can kind of work it off a little bit. There we go. Okay, I got that coolant block out. There's a rather large O-ring in here that you'll need to replace when you put this back in your new head, or this head if you rebuild it. Now to move on to the right side and take this top timing cover off and our dipstick tube out. Okay, we're gonna have to go about this a little bit unconventionally, and that is because this motor mount has 12 millimeter triple squares that go through the block. And the problem is my sockets are too deep to get between the frame rail and the head of the bolt. So what I'm gonna do is work on getting this upper timing cover off, and then we'll take the valve cover off, and then we'll rotate our cams up to get the chains off of them. So the first thing we're gonna do is get this variable valve timing solenoid off. We have a bolt down here that is also holding on the dipstick. There we go. Now I'm gonna try to work this dipstick tube out from the bottom because it is, I believe, plastic, so we need to be careful with it to not break it. Out from the bottom. We're so close to getting it out of there. There we go. All right, we're coming in to get this upper timing cover off. I should be able to get the upper 3 bolts out with this socket, but the lower 2, because of the motor mount, I'm probably gonna have to use a wrench. Thank goodness they put hex heads on these as well. They are pretty tight. I think these bolts actually lock into this cover, which is nice. Now I'm gonna go for those 2 tricky ones down at the bottom. Now with all the bolts loosened up, We should be able to take this upper timing cover off. There we go. Let's see what our chain looks like. It's definitely slack here on the backside. I think it's pretty safe to say this engine jumped time. We know it did anyway because the valves crashed into the pistons. The next step we're going to have to do is carefully get this cam bridge off. And I say carefully because there's not a lot of gap here between the timing cover and the bolts, but there is enough. And this has to slide off the cams. There is a special tool that you have to take this lock off inside the cam here, which I do have. We're going to use this special socket to take this cam lock off. And with this, you go the opposite direction. This is right loose, left tight. So you're going to fit these dowel pins inside of the lock. There it is. Now we can take off the rest of this cam bridge, which is just a bunch of those T30 Torx. With all the bolts out, we should now be able to walk our bridge out. Just like that. And leak oil everywhere. Next step we're going to do now is take off the valve cover. And then we can release our cams and just rock them off of these chains, since I can't get to the motor mounts right now. I'm going to have to order special sockets for the motor mount to get that off, and I don't have them at the moment, but this will at least get us to where we need to be. So on the valve cover, there's a bunch of T30s. Keep in mind this valve cover also acts as the caps for the cams, so they are going to want to lift as you get this off. I'm going to start in the middle and work my way out. Not that I think it really matters, but it's what I'm going to do. There we go. Now we'll see if we can lift our cams off and just get them out from under our chains here. There's our intake cam, and it looks in pretty good shape. I don't feel any ridges. I think this is a good cam right here. And we'll take our exhaust cam off. Our chain can just chill out for a minute. We reached almost the showstopper of a problem, and that's that my socket that I got yesterday for these head bolts, although it's supposed to be for these, it's not fitting. I actually tapped this down with a hammer and got it to fit. I'm going to attempt to take this head bolt out and see what happens. That is working. And I'm not worried about damaging these head bolts because you do not reuse these. These are torque to yield bolts. Now we're going to attempt to get the head off with the timing chain guides still in because I can't get them out at the moment. Oh, I forgot these 4 bolts. Let's take our cylinder head off. Whoa!